Have a chat with you about socialisation. Many times when I go to a consultation with people, I ask them how they've been socialising their dog, and the most common response that I get is I take my dog to an off-leash park and I let it run around and it learns how to be social. I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, but taking your dog to an off-leash park is kind of the opposite of socialisation. Any dog trainer that you talk to that's actually done any kind of course with decent psychology behind it will explain to you that the whole terminology of socialisation effectively means learning how to interact with a living thing within constraints. So if you then look at the situation of an off-leash park, you'll start to notice that most of the interaction that dogs do is kind of impulsive, it's excitable, it's free, and it has very little bearing on socialisation. Yes, there is a benefit to a degree of learning how to be around other dogs in an off-leash environment, because then the dogs do learn how to interact to a degree. But once we go past that small component of socialisation, the rest of it is effectively uncontrolled behaviour. And the problem with uncontrolled behaviour is that it leads to potentially impulsive behaviour that's got a foundation in how the dog's development has taken it to that point in time. Let me give you an example. Most of us have been to an off-leash park, and if you just cast your mind back to the last time you went, you probably saw that there was the bully. This is a dog that's running around everywhere, smashing into dogs, pinching balls, running around, causing general mayhem. You then got the potential herder, which is a dog running around the perimeter, barking and trying to herd all the other dogs up and just generally being quite vocal about it. Then you've got the thief, the dog that runs around and stalks and takes balls and runs and hides and does all sorts of other bits and pieces. And then sometimes you've got the dog that's not quite sure. He's hanging around his owners and the dog turns up and he runs around the other way, hides around his owner's feet, or is continuously running away from other dogs. Effectively, in the context of the greater picture of socialisation, all of those are behaviours that we need to control. So if I'm a dog that's impulsively driven to chase other dogs, then the more I'm allowed to do that behaviour, the more I'm learning that that's a default behaviour, that it's okay to be done. If I'm a dog that's easily intimidated by other dogs, and the more I'm put in that situation that I'm intimidated and moving away from pressure is a potential problem, because then I develop that moving away is a good way to remove pressure. If I'm the stalker and I'm the herder, which is an instinctive behaviour, the more I'm put in that environment, the more I'm learning that herding and doing that kind of behaviour in that public arena is the way to behave. All of those are not quite right. So socialisation should be about why you're intimidated. Let's address the reason why you're intimidated and actually remove you from that situation when you show a more constructive behaviour. Or if you're impulsive and you want to chase everything that moves, how do I get you to deal with that behaviour so that you're less inclined to chase, but learning how to control those behaviours. So if you start to look at the greater picture of socialisation, it's all about putting the dog into an environment that it learns how to relate in that particular situation within constraints. So it doesn't become a nuisance, it doesn't become overly excitable, and it doesn't get intimidated and want to run away from things. Then you've got a more balanced dog. The other problem with off-leash behaviours is two dogs can get along really well for about 3 years. They play, they do all sorts of stuff, and then one day they'll fight over a stick, and then all of a sudden we've got a potential problem on our hands. And because they're off-lead, every single time we're putting them in that situation, we're relying on good luck rather than good management to deal with that behaviour. I'm not saying don't put your dog in those scenarios, but a good situation would be allow your dog to interact with other dogs in an off-leash environment, and when you see a behaviour that you find that doesn't contribute to a positive outcome, you need to interrupt that behaviour and stop the dog from continuing that. Then you've got the balance of both worlds. You've got a dog that's now able to deal with other dogs in an off-leash environment, and you've actually got the means to control it. And it's very difficult to control a dog off-leash, so it requires a high degree of learning. The other part that people don't understand is council bylaws are pretty stringent in the way they want you to own a dog. So if you attend an off-leash environment, your dog still has to be under effective control. Now, effective control is a very loose term. And most councils have a slightly different perspective on what that means. But technically it means if your dog is rushing and running straight towards another dog, you have to be able to have the ability to call the dog back. It needs to be able to stop chasing, needs to come all the way back to you, and it has to either sit, stand or drop under control because you've called it back. The last time you went to an off-leash park, how many dogs that were there have the ability to be called back under distraction to their owners and be under effective control? If your answer is not many, then you probably understand the reason why I discourage people from going to an off-leash park. And they are also the breeding ground for problems that can get you into a legal minefield. I do a lot of expert witness assessments, and a great many of off-leash situations can potentially lead to problems in a legal situation or a legal outcome, which is not a really good place to be, because if your dog happens to bite a child or bite a person or an elderly person or another dog, there potentially are criminal prosecution charges that follow through that. So the moral of the story is, if you want to socialise your dog, the best place to take it is to a dog training centre that's run by accredited professionals that have got at least a Cert 3 or Cert 4 qualifications, that understand dog psychology and dog behaviour, so that the socialisation can start at the early stages on leash and progressively develop to an off-leash scenario. So they're learning how to relate to other dogs of varying breeds, sizes, attitudes, personalities, all within constraints of obedience and problem solving and learning, kind of like kids at school and sport, which is the best way to socialise. I hope you found this informative. Happy to take any questions or answer comments. As usual, post a comment and I'll get back to you. Thanks again, guys. Have a good day.